this video, we're going to be replacing the sway bar links, and you don't necessarily need to take the wheel off. We pulled the wheel off to show you better access. If you're doing this on the ground, you may want to take the wheel off, but you don't need to. I'm going to disconnect this sway bar link on the bottom. There's a nut on the back side here. Take an 18mm wrench, loosen up the nut. If the stud starts to spin, then what you can do is use a hex socket or a hex bit or a hex key and hold the stud, but it's not spinning at this time. Remove that nut and just slide it out. Using an 18mm socket, you can take this nut off right here. Take that nut off, and there's a bracket. Take that bracket off. Take a little rust penetrant. Soak that down a little bit. Now we can loosen up this nut just using an 18mm wrench. If this stud starts to spin while you're doing this, then you can use a hex socket. You're going to use a 5mm hex socket and a ratchet, and you can hold the stud from spinning while you continue to loosen the nut. Take that nut off and slide the link out. Slide the link through. Slide the nut on. Instead of using a hex bit to hold the stud from spinning, you can actually use an 18mm wrench to hold from the backside, which makes it a lot easier to install. Slide the nut on. And I'm going to take my 18mm wrench on the backside, hold that stud, use an 18mm socket to tighten up the nut. Then we'll take a torque wrench and we're going to torque this to 92 foot-pounds. All right, that's good. Take this bracket, we want to slide it back on, make sure the wires are out of the way, and install the nut. Tighten up that nut, just snug. Line up the bottom link. If it's not in line with the hole in the lower control arm, you can just take a wrench and line it up in the right position and slide it through. Take the nut, slide the nut on, tighten the nut down. Then torque this to 92 foot-pounds.